What's going on, guys? Good to be back. Had a lot going on. I've had some turmoil in my. I'm just giving you guys some life updates before we get into the meat of this video, which will be about Rick Probstein shilling his own auctions, getting hacked, starting his own auction services. Snipe, I believe it's called. I probably know that for sure. But he started his own site basically, and we're just going to kind of frankly go over this. We're not going to state it as fact, but before I get into that and get into the ethics and the morality of shilling your own auctions and the implications for the Pokemon market in general, I just wanted to share some things about my own life before we get into that, because it has been a couple days and it's getting harder and harder for me to stay on track with making videos, which I really miss making videos, but just life. Trying to keep up with maintaining this property on top of our old house, which is a rental property now. We just got our 3rd month's rent, which is great, but it did not come with its own sacrifices and drawbacks. For anybody considering renting their home in the future instead of selling, which is what I've done. I do think that is the smart move. That property is continuing to rise in value. On top of that, the rent is paying for the property taxes as well as giving me some kind of passive income, even though really, as a lot of people told me, it hasn't been passive. Has it been a nightmare? It hasn't been a nightmare, but it's definitely had its tosses and turns. But I think it's been for the best, honestly. So basically, every single month, a couple days before rent is due, I get some message about something that needs to be fixed. First, it was duct work and the air quality in the house, which is just weird. But I reimbursed the tenant half of what she spent on getting duct work stuff done, which was without my permission. I probably could have just evicted her based on that. But then after that, I had a small water droplet from the shower lever, which me and my wife had never really worried about, never really fixed it. But of course, had to fix that for the tenant. That cost me about $500. And then, which was really, really good. We've got Diana's brother is in the electrician world, and he knows a lot of people that do contract work. So anyways, he's always able to reference people. He also referenced people that helped with our HVAC when we moved into this house and saved us like thousands of dollars. But yeah, this recent thing was about the legality of smoke detectors in our house. And most of you have probably never looked at your smoke detectors. We didn't. Of course, they still worked, which was my rebuttal to her, my tenant. We got into kind of a heated debate, which me and my wife kind of created our own response, which was a very apprehensive and assertive response, which I think looking back was the wrong way to go about it. If you're dealing with tenants, you need to realize something that I've realized now, which is just that, and this sounds so simple, but we're all just human beings. We all just want love, respect, and our dignity, right? Like, she wanted to be treated with respect. I want to be treated with respect. I felt like she came at me, and then she felt like we shot back at her saying that, like, hey, you having a handyman come in and like tell us that our detectors are like gonna be defective, whatever, like that's against the lease terms, and you're violating the lease basically. But I took a step back and I ended up, and then, I said that I could maintain the property, but I expected her to. And then she shot back with, no, you said you would do everything, so I'm not paying anybody to maintain anything on the property, which at the end of the day, I ended up going there, doing a ton of yard work myself, which was months backed up, which is fine because I love the property. I want to see it maintained. But I ended up knocking on the door and just wanting to speak to her and saying like, hey, can we just start fresh? Like, go out, get a cup of coffee, talk about everything going on, and just kind of reassured her that I care about how she feels about living in the house and I want her to enjoy living there. So this is just kind of my cautionary tale to you guys. If you're ever considering renting, just treat the person with respect and don't treat them like they're just coming at you. There are people like that have, that have, oh, what's the word for it? They're just trying to stir things up, really. They're trying to create drama. They're trying to create problems. There are going to be those people, but I think genuinely most people just are projecting. And I felt like she was projecting with a lot of the issues she had. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to replace all the fire detectors. We're going to add some carbon monitors. I'll just pay for all the stuff. I'll get a fire extinguisher if you really feel weird about like something happening in the house. I don't personally, I know that's going to sound crazy, but I don't, like, if that house burned down, it wouldn't matter because the property that it's in is very close to uptown Charlotte and the value would be in the property itself. But anyways, that's just what I've been dealing with lately, and I've ironed everything out and we are on great terms, and she just paid her rent, and it feels good to be like getting the hang of kind of being a landlord for the first time. So I just kind of wanted to share that with you guys. For anybody that is curious out there about like doing something on the side, making extra money as opposed to just selling the house. And that, helps that rent, helps take off, a big chunk of our mortgage in the new house. Anyways, that being said, also my investments, I haven't talked about QuantumScape lately. That has dipped quite a bit. I'm staying in it for the long haul. Hopefully we get some kind of Santa rally, but let's jump back into the meat of the video. I know, thank you guys for sticking around for the past 6 minutes. You didn't have to do that. I appreciate you guys. But I'm just trying to catch everybody up to speed with what I've been up to. We are going to do our Wednesday stream as usual. I'm off Wednesday, so we might even start that stream a little bit early, guys. So that'll be exciting to start that up. But, so Probstein apparently has been shilling his own auctions. I don't know how valid the information is. There's a couple, iffy sources. Apparently they were hacked. If the site was hacked and it released information, which it released some information that there were bids coming from a email that is honeybunny@gmail.com or something like that. And that basically traced back to Rick Probstein, which implies that he has been pumping up his own auctions for quite some time. I think there were thousands of auctions and transactions done from that account. Again, none of this, I'm not going to state this stuff as fact. I just want to talk about the implications of what this actually means for Pokemon in general and the markets in general, right? You have the major auction powerhouse, James from ZNG Emporium, and basically he's been around for a really long time, and we've got another big auction coming up this week. The first edition Sabrina's Gengar and a PSA 10, which I plan on placing a bid in, but not going too crazy on. But I wanted to talk about this because I think like cards like that are a perfect example of what shill bidding does. People have that card listed around $18,000, $20,000. I don't think it's worth more than $14,000, $15,000 to be honest with you guys. But I would not be shocked at all to see that auction go beyond $20,000. Just from people pumping up the numbers. There are going to be other sellers that are selling the same card that might shill bid it. There might be people involved that have always been pumping up these cards. I don't know, but I don't think that James has anything to do with anything like that. I think that just because Rick Probstein may have done something like that doesn't imply that all the big auction houses on platforms like eBay are doing something like that. But it's something for everybody to think about right now. We were at the peak of a market. It might be cooling down a little bit. Really, it's not cooling down for vintage, which is very interesting because there are several copies of that first edition Sabrina's Gengar. I bring up the Gengar because I'm big on trying to collect some of the rarest Gengar cards in the Pokemon TCG, and it's very important to me. And it's not, it's relevant to this topic because it's going to be a very, very big auction, and the numbers are probably going to get pumped up, and it's probably going to go for more than what it's actually worth. And it's something for everybody to think about, that in this hobby, you're going to have a lot of cards that are going to go for way more than what they're worth. Right now, I'm not going to name out some of the cards that I've sent offers on, but I'm not really buying right now. I'm kind of window shopping, and most of that is not entirely just due to me not being able to buy. Just people are not taking lower offers right now. Everyone is super, super firm on their pricing. I sent I sent a $16,000 offer for a PSA 10 first edition Sabrina Gengar, and it just didn't even get responded to. It blows my mind that that card is worth more than $16,000 right now. At the same time, I do understand it. I do love vintage. I do think it's going to hold up long term. And it's got a really low population in PSA 10. And a lot of the cards that are going to be I feel like long-term sustainable, they are going to be low pop, they are going to be vintage, they are going to have that nostalgia factor, and they're just going to be really rare, right? The whole thing with low population is that the cards are super rare, and that's kind of what makes them so sought after and creates such a high demand. But it's interesting with the cards that are so rare and could have such a high demand, and yet there's several copies on the market right now and they're not moving. That tells me that maybe things are overpriced right now in the vintage realm, and maybe even some of my favorite cards are a little overpriced. Yeah, I think this has been happening for a really long time, guys. I think everybody can agree that it's probably been happening for a really long time, particularly in the major bubble boom phase we had, a couple months back. It felt like card prices were just skyrocketing, and we saw one card in particular that I watched that I definitely feel like was shill bid to oblivion was the Latios GX. I felt like every single time that card hit the market, it hit a higher high, and it just did not make any sense to me because there's still plenty of those cards on the market, plenty of those cards in circulation. Definitely lower population compared to a lot of other modern cards, but definitely feel like it was getting pumped up. Same thing with the Bubble Mew, which is funny because it is the Bubble Mew, and it definitely was in a bubble. That card was getting pumped up to $2,000 a copy, and I just think that was way overvalued. I think a lot of people are realizing that a lot of cards are overvalued right now, and I'm wondering, is the community ready to have that discussion of like, I think card prices have gone a little too far and things need to retrace a little bit. eBay is amazing. It's amazing to be able to hunt for just about anything. And sometimes you'll find a better deal on eBay than you will at going to a card show. And that's kind of messed up. It kind of like whenever I go to card shows, I usually feel like I can get a better deal or find a better condition version of that same card on eBay versus the card show. And this is strictly talking about vintage cards that I go after, right? A lot of like the gold stars and first edition, just about anything, right? Any of the first edition sets I think are super nostalgic and should be sought after. But going after cards like that at a show, I feel like doesn't usually turn out that well in comparison to just shopping on eBay in the comfort and luxury and convenience of being in your own home and just like tapping a button on a screen, right? But that being said, eBay is also a place where cards get super inflated and people place bids where they have no intentions of actually buying the cards. I've talked about this before, but I feel like there's even more people in the hobby now. There's even more people seeking to manipulate the numbers. Again, I definitely think that other sellers that own some of these cards and have them listed for sale, they have incentives, right? They have incentives. They have incentives to pump the numbers up on those cards, right? If they want to sell their card for $20,000 and the auction's sitting at $15,000 with an hour left, right? They might be ballsy enough to say, "Hey, I'm gonna pump this up because if anything, I'll just buy this for myself." If someone else doesn't buy it, they want to keep the market high on that card, right? You got sellers like Big Box Gaming that every single time he sells the card and then he puts it up again, and when he puts it up, it's for even more. I definitely have beef with sellers that they sell a card and then they list the exact same card a week or 2 weeks later for thousands of dollars more. Like, where are you getting these valuations? And I think in general, another thing that somebody in our Discord, Dr. Rocket, wanted me to talk about, and I guess, this will blend this in with this topic, is that, where are people getting these valuations? Where are people getting these insane valuations for cards? We're seeing this in the stock market where stocks are super high value. Michael Burry thinks that Nvidia, which is really pulling up the whole market. Michael Burry, the big short guy, the guy who made a ton of money in the 2008 housing crisis, shorting the market. He believes, this company's way overvalued. I think that mentality is kind of how I feel about Pokemon right now. I think long-term Pokemon is going to be a very successful franchise in TCG, and it's proven itself again and again and again and again. And I think a lot of people have just accepted, this is the new norm. And we just have to get used to these prices, but I definitely feel like people are coming up with these insane valuations, and they just want to make profits out of thin air on cards that shouldn't be going for what they're trying to get them to go for. Again, there are several examples that I have of cards that I'm going after right now, but again, I'm trying to not shoot myself in the foot and say, hey, everybody, these are some of the best cards in the hobby, and they're very hard to get, and I don't want to push the agenda that someone should go spend the list price on some of the cards that I'm going after, when the reality is eventually someone is going to need money, someone is going to want to sell those cards, someone is going to have their priorities shift, and that is when the opportunity presents itself to pick up a card that you really want, right? For example, I will shoot myself in the foot talking about the Sabrina's Gengar some more. There's one up for auction right now, and it's with Z&G. It could definitely get pumped up to oblivion, but I don't know. I feel like people are on edge. Right now it's the holidays. People I feel like people aren't really shopping per se. If they're shopping, it's getting ready for, stuff in the future like Christmas. But for the most part, people are working on relationships, family, spending time with people they care about. And, usually these next couple of months, the hobby does slow down. This could be a really good opportunity to pick up some cards that you really like. Hopefully the market is not as affected from people trying to pump up numbers, place shill bids, and just artificially inflate everything. So I think this could be a good time. The Sabrina's Gengar, I'm definitely hoping I can catch a break on that card. It would definitely confirm that right now things are slowing down and people are less risky. They're less gutsy. They're not as willing to pay an arm and a leg for some of these cards. And even for me, it's really tough. It's not that well, don't worry about the money. If you love the card, don't worry about the money. Yes, but there's also cheaper alternatives, right? That being said, if you're looking at a PSA 10 Sabrina Gengar, right? Like what I'm looking at, and people want $20,000, $18,000, but I got my 9 for $2,000 with trade value at the last show I was at, which I will say shows are great for trading into stuff, and you get to actually look at the physical card, which is really nice because you can't really do that when you're shopping online. But what was I going to say? There are better alternatives, right? You can get a new cert PSA 9, and it's most likely, in terms of vintage, it's most likely going to be just as nice. It's very subjective, right? Grading is very subjective. It's very hard for me to believe that people are willing to spend $10,000 plus on the exact same card in PSA 10 when it's just barely nicer. Now, I love to go after PSA 10s now. It is, the epitome of grail status, right? There's, only so many of them in the world, and that's very exciting and everything, but there are cheaper alternatives. And even for me, if I can find the card and it's really clean in a PSA 9, I'm going to pick up the PSA 9. So I think that that's a great alternative. I definitely feel like with some of the grail sellers and collectors and the high-end, type of vendors, I feel like they're more likely to bid up cards that are these vintage PSA 10 cards. and try and get that off to the next guy even higher. But I feel like PSA 9s might be a safe haven for vintage collectors right now. But that's just my thoughts on everything. Back to Rick Probstein. What are the long-term effects that this will have on his business? It'll probably be a blip on the radar. People will probably soon forget about it. But really, the community should be very apprehensive about stuff like this and take it seriously and think about the implications for the future and these big auctions, especially in places like eBay where a lot of us like to shop, and consider that, hey, maybe these prices are being pumped up and it isn't what it seems. Anyways, I know that's really generalized thing to say, but I don't know. Things seem crazy right now. Pokemon continues to chug along and people are hyped up about the newer sets, and that's all fine and dandy. But some of these older cards that I'm desperately trying to go after, I am worried that, and I've been saying this for months now, that this is the end. You know, getting these cards being affordable, those days are over, right? It's now it's a house down payment, or buying a car basically is what it costs to get, get your foot in the door on some of these really rare cards. And it's just really tough. And for me personally, like value-wise, I'm like struggling with the reality of my life, and just like I could put a lot of money down on my house and continue to make principal down payments. Principal payments additionally to my mortgage. I could buy another sports car, right? Which that's going to depreciate. That's not going to be a great investment, but I get a lot of enjoyment out of it, right? You know, I'm looking at these cards and I'm like, geez, $20,000 for the Sabrina's Gengar. I mean, I know this really, like, a lot of you aren't going to care about this, but I care because there are other things that I'm passionate about. And like, damn, like I could find a used BMW F80 M3, M4, M5, and that would be the fun factor there would be phenomenal, right? I'm a big car guy. I really enjoy driving my cars, and now we live much further from the city than we used to. So I'm like, damn, I could buy a really, really fun car and have a great time with it, instead of dropping $20,000 on some of these cards. So it's just getting kind of crazy, and it's kind of it's making me cautious, and it makes me just want to invest in other things. And that's a big reason why I've been trying to do the day trading and investing more in the stock market, because I can't see how it's sustainable for me to continue buying cards. So, and I'm a little bit like disappointed and shocked in myself over some of the cards that I've bought recently, right? Like looking back on it, I'm like, these cards are going up in value, right? But really it's because the same sellers are pumping up these cards. It's not necessarily because they're organically going up in value, right? So guys, be very careful buying some of these low pop grail vintage cards. Just be very, very careful. And the same kind of goes for the modern market, right? Some of these cards are going to be super hyped up, like the Phantasmal Flames Charizard. As much as I love that card, I really hope that it doesn't get like shill bid continuously to being a multi-$1,000 card in a PSA 10, because that's a modern card that I would really like to have in my collection. Let's see, anything else? Yeah, back to the implications, just on eBay in general. It's very easy for sellers to create an alternate account and shill bid their own auctions, right? It's not hard, right? Get their friend to bid on their auctions, pump those numbers up. It's not hard to do. It happens. While it's unethical, it's actually way more common than people probably realize, but it gets really sticky and does a lot of damage when you get into these high value cards, right? I'm not talking about making, a $500 card, a $600 card, right? I know it's the same concept, but there's so much more damage to be done on those higher value cards, because the way the auctions work, it's not like you can place $5 more. When you make your next bid on these higher value cards, it has to be several hundred or even $1,000 more for that bid to stay put there and get in. So these cards are going to be exponentially more expensive the more people are willing to take the risk and just be like, oh, you know what? I think this card is worth more than the last guy. I'm going to place a bid here, even though the card's probably worth several $1,000s less. I'm going to place a higher bid because I want mine to sell for the higher price, right? I'm really talking about like this. Like I have a Neo Genesis First Edition Lugia up for sale, right? It's set for sale at $8,000. If I see an auction at $7,000 and I want to pump those numbers up so that mine can sell for higher, I might place in a bid just high enough, just high enough so that someone has to pay a little bit more to win that auction, but it gets closer to my price, right? So I think that that's been going on eBay. I know that it's been going on eBay for a very long time. And it's very concerning. And as more people are in the space and in the hobby, I think it's going to happen more. So I don't know. What do you guys, I'm interested to hear what you guys think about Rick Probstein and like what's going to happen with him. Are people going to avoid his auction house? Are people going to avoid supporting anything that he does? Is this maybe this hacked information? Is it maybe false? Is someone trying to get back at him? Could it be something like that? I did not look enough into it to actually know that, other than just what I'm theorizing and speculating, but it was something worth talking about because it's pretty relevant, and I think it impacts everything in the whole auction space. And some of the auctions just in the last couple weeks and months have just been outrageous. So I just can't believe that someone actually thinks these cards are worth as much as they're going for. I think that there's something else at hand, something else in play here. And I just think there's a lot more fraud and unethical behavior going on in the hobby. And it sucks because I can't get my foot in the door on some of these cards without paying an arm and a leg. And surely probably paying and putting in a bid in over someone's shill bid, right? Like that's the reality right now. Is I feel like some of these cards that I want to get, I'm just gonna have to just pay the list price, and just it sucks because I don't want to pay these crazy prices. But it's not just that. I also don't think it's fair that I pay these crazy prices and then the next guy has to pay even more, right? Because the next sellers are going to say, oh, the last one sold for this, so let's pump these numbers up. Pokemon hobby is especially with vintage stuff right now, it just feels like it's not sustainable and won't last much longer. So it'll be interesting over these next couple months to see if things will finally slow down. Will we collectors, of the vintage stuff, will we finally catch a break on this stuff? But yeah, let me know what you guys think about the whole shill bidding thing. Did anybody even hear about it? Is this news to you guys? I'm getting to this several days late. I think this was relevant a couple days ago, but I did want to talk about it. Anyways, glad I could make a video today, and hopefully it wasn't too ranty and redundant. And we'll be making a video tomorrow and our live stream on Wednesday. Anyways, peace out. I'll catch you guys on the flip side.